The massive crystalline archway of the Interstellar Defense Academy towered above Yunji Park. Sunlight from three different suns caught the structure's edges, sending rainbow-like reflections across the landing area. She stood alone, her simple human frame looking small and out of place among the other incoming cadets. Around her, alien species gathered in groups. A cluster of four-armed beings from Nexus Prime laughed together, their blue-green skin shifting colors with their emotions. Nearby, crystal-like creatures from the Vortex colonies stood in a perfect geometric formation, their transparent bodies catching and reflecting light. Floating gas-based life forms from the atmospheric regions drifted in complex patterns, communicating through color changes and subtle vibrations. And then there was Unji, just one human, alone. Her standard-issue academy uniform felt stiff and uncomfortable. The dark gray fabric was designed to be universal, but it seemed to fit her differently from the other cadets. The human patch on her shoulder looked simple and plain compared to the intricate insignias of other species. Some cadets glanced her way, their expressions a mix of curiosity and something that looked like mild disappointment. Yunji knew her reputation before she even arrived. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Confederation, and most senior species saw them as young, inexperienced, and barely ready for space travel. She had heard the whispers, the comments passed between other species. Humans are too emotional. They're too primitive. They haven't even solved their own planet's problems. But Yunji was not like most humans. She had worked harder than anyone to get here. While other children played or dreamed about space, she studied star maps, learned alien languages, and trained her body and mind. Her parents, both scientists who worked on early human space exploration projects, had taught her one important lesson: never let anyone tell you what you can't do. The registration area buzzed with activity. Holographic screens displayed incoming cadet information. Some screens showed complex biological data for species with multiple genetic markers. Others displayed intricate navigation histories or advanced skill assessments. When Yunji's information appeared, it looked almost too simple in comparison. A tall, tentacled creature from the Kraken Nebula approached the registration desk. Its body changed colors as it communicated through a translation device. The desk's AI responded smoothly, processing its complex entry requirements with ease. When Yunji's turn came, she noticed how the AI seemed to pause, as if processing her information required extra effort. Cadet Yunji Park, the AI's neutral voice announced. Human. First representative from Earth to the Interstellar Defense Academy. A few nearby cadets turned to look. Some whispered. Others simply stared. Yunji kept her back straight and her eyes forward. She would not show them her nervousness. Her training bag felt heavy on her shoulder. Inside were a few personal items. A photo of her parents, a small Earth rock her grandfather had given her, and a data chip with her personal study materials. Each item represented a piece of her journey, a journey that had brought her to this moment. The Academy's main entrance seemed to breathe with its own energy. Holographic displays shifted and changed, showing images of past graduates, mostly non-human, with incredible achievements and complex histories. Yunji wondered if she would ever see a human face among those honored images. A soft chime indicated the start of cadet processing. One by one, alien species moved forward, their movements smooth and confident. Yunji took a deep breath. She had one goal: to prove that humans belonged here, not just as diplomats or visitors, but as true defenders of the galaxy. She stepped forward, her footsteps steady and determined. Her journey was just beginning. The first training module hit Yunji like a wall of impossible challenges. Gravity manipulation was a basic skill for most alien species, but for humans, it felt like learning to breathe underwater. The training room shifted and changed, testing each cadet's ability to move, fight, and survive in different gravitational conditions. Krell, her crystalline roommate, watched her struggle with a mix of pity and mild annoyance. His body could adjust to gravity changes like water flowing through a glass. When the room's gravity increased to 3 times standard Earth pressure, most species simply adjusted their internal structures. Humans had no such ability. Yunji fell, again and again. The first week was a nightmare of constant failure. Physical training modules seemed designed to highlight human weakness, while other cadets moved with grace in high-gravity environments. She crawled, pushed, and fought against her body's limitations. Alien instructors made no effort to hide their disappointment. Cadet Park, Instructor Zoll would say, his multiple eyes blinking in a pattern that suggested frustration. Humans are not built for advanced military training. Perhaps diplomatic service would be a better path. But Yunji did not give up. Each night, after the other cadets had retired to their living quarters, she would return to the training room. She studied holographic recordings of her failures, analyzing every movement, every mistake. Her body ached. Her muscles burned. But her mind remained sharp and focused. Krall would sometimes find her there, practicing gravity adaptation techniques. At first, he would simply pass by, his prismatic body casting colored shadows on the training room floor. But as days turned into weeks, something changed. "You are inefficient," Krall said one night, watching her struggle with a complex movement sequence. "But you are persistent." The training modules were brutal. One day, cadets had to navigate a zero-gravity obstacle course while solving complex mathematical problems. Most species could use multiple limbs, mental projection, or advanced computational implants. Humans had only their basic problem-solving skills and physical strength. Yunji discovered her own method. Where others used speed and multiple appendages, she used careful planning and unexpected movements. She might be slower, but she found paths others missed. When she completed the course, she was last. But she completed it. The medical center became her second home. Human physiology was different from most species. While others could heal quickly or adjust their internal systems, Yunji relied on old-fashioned rest and determination. She studied her own body's limits, pushing them further each day. Nutrition was another challenge. The Academy's standard meal systems were designed for multiple metabolic types. Some cadets absorbed nutrients through skin contact. Others could survive on pure energy signals. Humans needed actual food, prepared in specific ways. Krall began to help her, surprisingly. He would use his advanced computational abilities to help her modify nutrition packets. "Humans are strange," he would say, "but interesting." The psychological training was perhaps the most difficult. Most species had developed advanced mental barriers and communication techniques over thousands of years. Humans were still learning. Telepathic probes that other cadets found simple would leave Yunji exhausted and disoriented. But she learned. She adapted. 1 month into training, something changed. The instructors stopped looking at her with pure disappointment. Now, there was a hint of something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or something that looked like respect. Yunji did not know it yet, but she was beginning to show them something they had never expected. Humans might be new to the galaxy. They might seem weak, but they were far from defeated. Her journey was just beginning. The tactical simulation room was unlike anything Yunji had seen before. Holographic displays filled the space, creating three-dimensional battlefields that shifted and changed with impossible speed. Most cadets used standard combat protocols, predictable, precise, and carefully programmed. Yunji was different. Her first breakthrough came during a complex strategic exercise. The simulation demanded quick thinking and adaptive strategy. Most alien species approached the challenge with their advanced computational abilities, running thousands of potential scenarios in milliseconds. Humans had something else: creativity. The scenario seemed impossible. A multi-planet defense against an unknown invasion force. Traditional strategies would fail. The other cadets ran their programmed responses, watching as holographic units fell one by one. When Instructor Zoll looked at Yunji, he expected another human failure. She did something unexpected. Instead of following the standard defense grid, Yunji began to move her units in seemingly random patterns. Where other cadets created perfect geometric formations, she created chaos. Her units zigzagged. They retreated when others would attack. They attacked from impossible angles. The simulation's advanced AI began to struggle. Kral watched from the sidelines, his crystalline body reflecting the holographic light. "What is she doing?" he asked another cadet. The other student simply shook several of its appendages, the alien equivalent of a shrug. Yunji's strategy broke every known combat rule. She used terrain in ways no one had considered. She sacrificed units to create distractions. She turned the battlefield into a complex puzzle that the invasion force couldn't solve. Where others saw a military exercise, she saw a living, breathing system with weaknesses to exploit. When the simulation ended, something strange happened. The AI actually failed to complete its invasion. For the first time in the Academy's history, a cadet had created a completely unpredictable defense strategy. Instructor Zal approached her console, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly. "Explain your strategy," he demanded. Yunji took a deep breath. "I stopped thinking like a computer," she said simply. "I started thinking like a survivor." The instructor said nothing for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. News of her performance spread quickly. Other cadets began to look at her differently. The human who was once ignored now became a subject of careful study. Research teams started requesting access to her simulation recordings. What made her approach so different? The answer was simple. Humans didn't have the same programmed responses as other species. Where others saw rigid rules, Yunji saw possibilities. Where others calculated, she intuited. Her brain worked differently. Not better, just uniquely. Kral began to spend more time with her. "Explain your thinking," he would say, his crystalline form shifting with curiosity. At first, Yunji struggled to put her approach into words. How do you explain intuition? How do you describe thinking outside of programmed responses? More simulation exercises followed. Each time, Yunji found new ways to break the expected patterns. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the fastest. But she was becoming something else entirely. During a zero-gravity combat training session, she demonstrated the same unpredictable approach. While other cadets moved in precise, calculated movements, she used the environment itself as a weapon. She bounced off walls. She used momentum in ways that confused both her opponents and the training systems. Something was changing. The Academy was beginning to see humans differently. No longer just a new species in the Galactic Confederation, but a potential game changer. Yunji didn't know it yet, but she was rewriting the rules of engagement. Word spread quickly through the Interstellar Defense Academy. The human cadet who solved impossible simulations was no longer just a curiosity. She was becoming something more. During a high-risk survival training module, everything changed. The exercise was designed to push cadets to their absolute limits. A simulated planetary disaster zone with multiple environmental threats. Extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, unstable terrain. Most species had built-in survival mechanisms. Humans had only their wits and basic training. Kral watched Yunji carefully. His crystalline body could withstand extreme conditions. Most cadets from his species would sail through this exercise with minimal effort. But humans? They were always the biggest question mark. The module began. Simulation pods activated, creating a near-perfect recreation of a dying planet. Toxic winds howled. Gravity fluctuated. Radiation levels spiked unexpectedly. One by one, cadets began to fail. Their advanced biological systems couldn't keep up with the rapid environmental changes. Yunji moved differently. Where others panicked, she analyzed. She didn't have special abilities. She didn't have extra limbs or energy absorption skills. What she had was something more valuable. Adaptability. She found shelter in places others missed. She created tools from broken equipment. When her protective suit began to fail, she didn't wait for rescue. She started repairing it using materials around her. Her movements were slow but purposeful. Every action had a reason. Halfway through the exercise, something unexpected happened. Krell's simulation pod malfunctioned. His crystalline structure began to destabilize, a potentially fatal situation for his species. Most cadets would have been too focused on their own survival to notice. Yunji saw it immediately. Without hesitation, she changed her entire survival strategy. She used her limited resources to create a makeshift stabilization field. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't advanced, but it was enough to slow down Krell's molecular breakdown. When the simulation ended, Krell was alive. Several other cadets from more advanced species had failed. "Why did you help me?" Krell asked later, his body still recovering. His multiple communication nodes flickered with genuine confusion. Eunji's response was simple: "Because that's what teammates do." The instructors reviewed the simulation footage multiple times. They couldn't understand how a human, a species considered the least technologically advanced in the Galactic Confederation, had managed such a complex survival strategy. More training modules followed. Yunji continued to surprise everyone. Her physical limitations became less important as her adaptability became clear. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the fastest. But she could solve problems in ways no one expected. Other cadets started to change how they looked at her. No longer was she the weak human who didn't belong. She was becoming something else: a problem solver, a survivor. Research teams began to study her. What made human brains so different? How could they adapt so quickly? Yunji became more than just a cadet. She became a living research subject. During team exercises, cadets started to request her on their units. Her unique approach to problem-solving became an asset. Where others saw obstacles, she saw opportunities. Where others followed strict protocols, she found unexpected solutions. Krell became her closest ally. "Humans are strange," he would say. But there was respect in his voice now. No longer dismissal. No longer pity. The academy was changing, and Yunji was changing it, one impossible solution at a time. She didn't know it yet, but she was proving something important. Humans might be new to the galaxy. They might seem weak, but they were far from defeated. In fact, they were just getting started. The Xenos Challenge was the most important event in the Interstellar Defense Academy's yearly calendar. Every cadet waited for this moment, a full-scale competition where each species could show its best combat and strategy skills. Most species sent their top performers, their most advanced cadets. Humanity sent NG. Many thought it was a joke. How could one human compete against species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years? Some instructors suggested she should step down. Others believed she would bring embarrassment to her entire species. Yunji said nothing. She prepared. The challenge took place in a massive arena that could change environments in seconds. One moment, cadets might fight in a frozen wasteland. The next, they could be in a burning desert or a zero-gravity space zone. Each environment tested different skills. Most species trained for specific conditions. Humans had to be ready for anything. The first round shocked everyone. Yunji faced a four-armed warrior from the Kraken Nebula. This species was known for its incredible strength and complex fighting techniques. Their bodies could change shape. They had reflexes faster than most computer systems. On paper, a human stood no chance. But paper wasn't reality. When the battle started, Yunji moved differently. She didn't try to match the alien strength. Instead, she used the environment. She made the arena her weapon. While the Kraken warrior relied on pure power, she used strategy. She dodged. She waited. She observed. The Kraken warrior attacked with massive energy blasts. Each strike could destroy most opponents. Yunji didn't block. She redirected. She used the warrior's own energy against itself. When the first round ended, the Kraken warrior was defeated. The crowd was silent. Round after round, Yunji continued her unusual approach. She didn't win through pure strength. She won through understanding. Where others saw a fight, She saw a complex system with weaknesses to exploit. A crystal-based fighter from the Vortex colonies came next. These beings could transform their bodies into living weapons. They had fought in hundreds of galactic conflicts. Their combat history was legendary. Yun-Jae studied. She prepared. When they fought, she didn't attack the crystal fighter's strong points. She found its weaknesses. She used sound waves to create microfractures in its structure. She turned the environment into a weapon. Her strategy wasn't about destroying the opponent. It was about understanding the opponent. She won again. Krall watched from the sidelines, his crystalline body shifting with excitement. Other cadets began to understand something important. Humans weren't just another species. They were something else entirely. By the final rounds, something had changed. The other species no longer looked at Yun-Jae with pity or dismissal. Now, they watched with respect. Some watched with fear. The final challenge was a team-based scenario. Multiple species fighting together against a simulated invasion force. Most teams used standard military protocols, perfect formations, precise movements. Yun-Jae's team did something different. She turned the battlefield into a living, breathing system. Her team didn't just fight. They adapted. They changed. They became something more than a military unit. They became a living organism with one purpose: survival. When the final simulation ended, her team had done the impossible. They had beaten a scenario that had defeated every other team in the Academy's history. The arena went quiet. Yun-Jae stood in the center, surrounded by her teammates. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the fastest. But she had shown something more important. Humans were here, and they were ready to change everything. The research center was unlike any other place in the Academy. Bright lights filled clean white rooms. Strange machines hummed with complex energy. Scientists from different species gathered around screens, studying something that was changing everything they knew about biology and potential. Yun-Jae Park sat in the center of it all. After her performance in the Xenos Challenge, the Academy wanted to understand her. Not just her skills, not just her tactics. They wanted to understand what made humans different, what made her different. Blood samples, brain scans, genetic tests. They ran every test possible. Most species had predictable genetic patterns. Humans were something else entirely. Where other species had specialized genetic structures, humans had something more flexible, something that could change. Dr. Lyra, a lead researcher from the quantum biology department, couldn't believe her findings. Her neural pathways are different, she told her research team. Humans don't just adapt. They rewrite themselves. Genetic markers showed something unexpected. Human DNA wasn't just a fixed code. It was more like a living system that could change quickly. Where other species had rigid genetic structures, humans had something more fluid, more alive. The brain scans were even more interesting. Most species had specialized brain regions. Humans had connections that seemed to flow and change. One moment, a brain area would handle one function. The next moment, it could handle something completely different. Krall helped with the research. His crystalline body could interface directly with research equipment. Humans are chaos, he would say. But there was wonder in his voice now, not dismissal. They discovered something else. Humans had survived on a planet with constant changes. Extreme temperatures, different environments, limited resources. While other species evolved in stable conditions, humans evolved by changing, by surviving. Psychological tests showed more surprises. Where other species had fixed thinking patterns, humans could change their entire approach to a problem in seconds. They didn't just solve problems. They'd reimagine them. The research team brought in more human data. They studied historical records. Earth's history was a story of constant adaptation. Humans went from simple tools to space travel in a few thousand years. Other species took millions of years to make similar jumps. Dr. Lyra created special test modules, complex problem-solving scenarios that changed constantly. Most species would fail quickly. Humans, especially Yunji, found solutions that no one expected. It's not about being the strongest, Dr. Lyra would explain to her team. It's about being able to change faster than the problem. Yunji became more than a cadet. She became a living research subject. But she didn't mind. She understood something important. Knowledge was a weapon. Understanding was power. The Academy began to change how it saw humans. No longer were they a new, weak species. They were something else, a potential game-changer in galactic evolution. Other species started requesting human recruits, military teams, research groups, exploration missions. Humans were becoming something more than just another species in the Galactic Confederation. Krell watched all of this with growing understanding. Humans are not like other species, he would say. But now, there was respect in his voice. Humans didn't have extra limbs. They didn't have energy weapons. What they had was something more powerful. The ability to change, to survive, to reimagine everything. Yunji represented something new, not just for humans, but for the entire galaxy. She was just getting started. The simulation room was silent. Hundreds of cadets watched as the most complex military scenario in Academy history began to unfold. This was more than a test. This was a challenge that would define careers. Entire species waited to see what would happen. A massive multi-front interstellar conflict appeared on the holographic displays. Impossible odds, countless moving parts. Most military strategies would fail instantly. Yunji stood at the central command station. The scenario was brutal. 3 different invasion forces attacked from different directions. Planetary defenses were spread thin. Communication networks collapsed. Traditional military thinking would lead to total defeat. Most species had perfect battle protocols, perfect defensive strategies. Perfect didn't mean effective. Yunji saw the battlefield differently. Where others saw separate attacks, she saw a connected system. Each invasion force wasn't just an enemy. It was information. Each movement carried meaning. Each attack revealed weakness. She didn't follow standard defense protocols. Her first move shocked everyone. Instead of concentrating defenses in expected areas, she spread resources in seemingly random patterns. Krell watched her hands move across the holographic display. Her movements looked chaotic, but there was a deep logic hidden inside the chaos. Communication became her primary weapon. Most species had advanced communication networks, complex systems with multiple backup channels. Yunji did something different. She created a communication strategy that was simple but flexible. Where others had rigid networks, she built a living, changing system. Alien instructors couldn't understand her approach. She sacrificed some territories to gain better information. She used smaller units as mobile communication nodes. Each unit wasn't just a fighting force. It was a source of real-time intelligence. Her strategy turned the entire battlefield into a massive information-gathering network. The simulation's AI began to struggle. Normally, the AI could predict military movements with near-perfect accuracy. But Yunji's approach was different. She didn't just respond to the invasion. She changed the entire battlefield's rules. Her units moved in ways that broke standard computational models. Krell leaned closer to the display. "What is she doing?" he asked another cadet. The other cadet had no answer. Her strategy wasn't about winning through force. It was about understanding the entire system. She turned the battlefield into a living, breathing organism. Each unit could make local decisions. Each communication channel could adapt instantly. When the first hour of the simulation ended, something unexpected happened. The invasion forces started to fail, not because of massive attacks, not because of superior firepower, but because their own complexity became their weakness. Yunji had created a defense system that was more flexible than any invasion force. Instructors reviewed the simulation multiple times. They couldn't understand how she did it. Her approach broke every known military strategy. She didn't have the best weapons. She didn't have the most advanced technology. What she had was something more valuable: the ability to see connections others missed. The simulation ended. Her team had done the impossible. Senior military strategists from multiple species requested recordings of her performance. Research teams wanted to understand her approach. The Galactic Confederation's military leadership began to take notice. Yunji stood quietly, watching the display. She wasn't celebrating. She was already thinking about the next challenge, the next problem to solve, the next system to understand. Humans were changing everything, and they were just getting started. The Academy's final test was more than just a challenge. It was a moment that would define everything. Diplomatic tensions burned across multiple star systems. Complex political situations created a powder keg of potential conflict. Most cadets would be tested on their ability to follow strict protocols. Yunji would show something different. The test room looked like a living map of the galaxy. Holographic displays showed hundreds of planetary systems. Political boundaries shifted like living things. Conflict zones glowed in angry red colors. Communication channels flickered with tension. Yunji stood at the central command station. Her task was simple but impossible. Prevent a massive galactic conflict using only communication, strategy, and quick thinking. No military force, no direct intervention, just understanding and adaptation. Most cadets would fail instantly. She saw the galaxy differently, not as a collection of separate systems, but as one connected living organism. Each planet, each species, each communication channel was part of a bigger picture. Where others saw barriers, she saw connections. Her first move surprised everyone. Instead of following standard diplomatic protocols, she began to create communication networks between species that had no previous contact. She found small connections, shared interests, common goals that most diplomats had missed. Krall watched her closely. "Humans are strange," he would say. But now there was respect in his voice. Not just respect. Wonder. The simulation became more complex with each passing minute. Conflict zones expanded. Political tensions grew. Most cadets would have called for military intervention. Yunji did something different. She started solving problems before they became problems. Small diplomatic connections became larger networks. She found trade agreements between species that had been enemies for generations. She discovered shared scientific interests. She created communication channels that bypassed traditional diplomatic barriers. The Academy's most advanced AI began to struggle. Normally, the AI could predict diplomatic failures with near-perfect accuracy. But Yunji's approach was completely unexpected. She didn't just prevent conflicts. She reimagined how different species could work together. Instructors watched in complete silence. Her strategy wasn't about winning. It was about understanding. She saw each species not as a competitor, but as a potential partner. Each communication was a chance to build something new. When the first hour ended, something unexpected happened. Conflict zones started to shrink, not through force, not through military power, but through understanding, through finding common ground, through creating connections that nobody had seen before. Research teams requested complete recordings of her performance. They couldn't understand how she did it. Her approach broke every known diplomatic strategy. She didn't have the most advanced technology. She didn't have special powers. What she had was something more valuable: the ability to see possibilities others missed. The final simulation ended. She had done the impossible. Senior diplomatic advisors from multiple species requested her analysis. Research teams wanted to understand her approach. The Galactic Confederation's leadership began to take serious notice of this human cadet. Yunji stood quietly, watching the holographic display. She wasn't celebrating. She was already thinking about the next challenge, the next problem to solve, the next system to understand. Krall approached her. His crystalline body reflected the holographic lights. "Humans are not like other species," he said. But now, there was pure respect in his voice. Humans were changing everything, and they were just getting started. The graduation ceremony was unlike any the Interstellar Defense Academy had seen before. Hundreds of species gathered. Thousands of eyes watched. But everyone's attention was on one cadet. Eun-G Park stood alone, yet surrounded by respect. When her name was called, something changed in the room. The way she walked wasn't just a walk. It was a statement. She had entered the academy as the only human. She was leaving as a legend. Her uniform was simple. Her achievements were anything but. Senior officials from the Galactic Confederation sat in the front row. They weren't just watching a graduation. They were witnessing a moment that would change everything humans knew about their place in the galaxy. Krull stood nearby, his crystalline body reflecting the ceremony's lights. The head of the academy began to speak. His words were carefully chosen. Cadet Eun-G Park represents more than just an individual achievement, he said. She represents the potential of an entire species. Medals were not enough. Citations could not capture what she had done. During her time at the academy, she had changed how the galaxy saw humans. She wasn't the strongest cadet. She wasn't the fastest. But she showed something more important. Humans could adapt. Humans could solve problems in ways no one expected. Her academic record was extraordinary. Top scores in diplomatic strategies, highest marks in complex problem-solving, unique approaches to military simulations that had rewritten standard operating procedures. Research teams from multiple species wanted to study her methods. The military leadership was watching closely. Humans had always been seen as a young species, newcomers to the Galactic Confederation, not taken seriously. Eun-G changed all of that. She showed that being new didn't mean being weak. Being different was a strength. Her graduation speech was short but powerful. "We are not here to compete," she said. "We are here to understand, to connect, to solve problems together." Simple words, but they carried deep meaning. Other cadets watched her with a mix of respect and wonder. The species that had once ignored her now listened carefully. Her performance in the Xenos Challenge, her unique approach to complex simulations, her ability to create connections where others saw only barriers. She had proven something important. Humans were not just survivors. They were potential game changers. Research teams had discovered unique things about human biology, flexible genetic structures, neural pathways that could change and adapt quickly. Where other species had rigid systems, humans had something more fluid, more alive. The Galactic Confederation was changing. Recruitment teams from multiple organizations approached her. Military research groups, diplomatic services, exploration missions. Everyone wanted a human on their team now. Everyone wanted to understand how humans thought. Krull approached her after the ceremony. "You have changed everything," he said. His crystalline body shifted with complex emotions. Humans are not like other species. But now, there was pure respect in his voice. Eun-G smiled. She wasn't done. This was just the beginning. As she left the stage, something was clear. She had entered the academy alone. She was leaving a legend. But more importantly, she was leaving a path for other humans to follow. The galaxy would never be the same. Humans were here, and they were ready to show what they could do.